Hey, welcome back to the channel. Hopefully a short video today because I just want to talk about another hoop that's been thrown into the maze of things that CBOs will have to negotiate to get FRIAs allocated or get FRIAs recognised. Now, we know the FRIA process was put in place in September last year, the concept being that if you are a recognised CBO, you can apply to have certain areas excluded from the need to run remote ID. So, for example, AMA flying clubs should be submitting requests to become FRIAs so that their members don't have to fit remote ID to the models come September this year. It makes things smoother, simpler, and reduces the burden on the average model flyer. Things haven't gone quite to plan though, because although the FAA has in theory been accepting FRIA submissions since September last year, not one has been granted yet. And we're only nearly 4 months to the deadline when the second part of the remote ID rule comes in. And if there's not enough FRIAs, then what do people do? You either have to put a broadcast remote ID module on your model anyway, or not fly, or be non-compliant. And I would never recommend that to anybody, of course. But the situation now has been made a little bit harder because of this. The National Environmental Policy Act, which was signed into law on January 1970, a long time ago. What's that? That's 50 years, over 50 years ago. And it requires the FAA to ensure that environmental considerations are factored into its decision-making process. And of course, determining whether an application for a FRIA is accepted or declined is a decision-making process. So what the FAA has said, if you are making application for a FRIA, you have to provide us with some information to show that you are not breaching the National Environmental Policy Act. That sounds like just a whole lot of red tape and bureaucracy, doesn't it? And to be fair, the FAA actually concede, yes, it is just a whole lot of red tape and bureaucracy because they have published a guidance document. Let's take a look at that. And here it is. It's the draft programmatic environmental assessment document. And it's designed to guide you through the process of making your environmental assessment and submitting it along with your application for FRIA status. And it's a dainty little document. It's only 109 pages. Oh, shows you how easy this is going to be, doesn't it? But to be fair, they have, to sum it up in a nutshell, don't worry. The emissions and all the things that we do that might affect the environment are so inconsequential that they're unlikely to affect the application for FRIA status. And they back it up with science and documentation and evidence and spreadsheets, so you can see that we're quite a long way off having any real worries about adversely impacting the environment as a result of our model flying activities. But before we get to that, I want to look at the whole FRIA thing. They have given some estimates as to how many FRIAs they expect to be granting in the coming years. Let's take a look at that. They say here, based on information provided by the AMA, the FAA estimates that approximately 2,500 existing locations associated with AMA may request FRIAs between September 22 and September 23. In addition, the FAA estimates an additional 100 locations at which UA operations currently take place but which are not associated with the AMA may also seek FRIA establishments during that same time period. So that would cover the existing flying sites of the FPV Freedom Coalition and flight tests. Okay, so these are just existing flying sites. So altogether there we've got, maybe going on for 2,700 FRIAs they'll have to process. But this also doesn't include they say down here, it is anticipated that between September 22 and September 23, educational institutions may request to establish FRIAs at approximately 1,800 locations where UA are currently operated. So now we're looking at 3,500 FRIA applications by my rough and ready math. No, more than that, 4,500 applications, is it? No, I don't know. Yeah, lots anyway, thousands and thousands of FRIA applications. And the FAA has previously stated to people that each application may take 3 to 4 months to process. How are they going to get them all done by the 16th of September? It's only 4 months away, and that's a lot of work. I honestly don't think they'll get it done. I don't think they have enough people on staff to do that. And that leads us to something very unfortunate. It means that come September, we're going to have to do something, or someone's going to have to do something, because there will be insufficient FRIAs having been allocated or having been created, but there'll be people still wanting to fly without remote ID. So I suspect, I've got nothing to say this will happen, but this is my assumption that given that last year they pushed out the enforcement date for the first stage of remote ID from September to December, I think they're going to do the same thing with the second part of it, enforcing broadcast remote ID. I think they're going to push that out, maybe even beyond December. Maybe they'll push it out they might even push it out by a year, because they've got so much work to get all these FRIAs approved in that time. I don't think they'll be able to do it. So they're going to push that further out. It's the simplest thing to do. And so that's probably what they will do. But now we've got to look at beyond that initial allocation. Obviously, flying sites will come and go. When a flying site disappears, the FRIA is gone. A new application has to be made if you're going to set up a flying site somewhere else. So there will be a turnover of things, and each new flying site, whether it replaces an old one or not, will require a FRIA application. What is the FAA's anticipated levels of that kind of activity? Let's go and have a look. New locations. This category comprises or proposed FRIA locations that are not currently being used by an educational institution or CBO to operate UA, but where the UA operators may already be operating in the area of compliance with existing operating authorities. I don't understand that. Either they're operating or they're not. Anyway, perhaps I misread that. Anyway, based on information provided by the AMA, the FAA estimates approximately 80 to 85 new locations may seek FRIAs annually between 22 and 27. The FAA also anticipates that non-AMA member organisations recognised by the FAA as CBO may seek to establish approximately 4 new FRIAs annually between 22 and 27. Now, I think that's a very small number, because there are 4 CBOs in total. And if you take out the AMA, that's 3 others. So what the FAA is expecting is just over 1 new application per year, per CBO. I don't think that is anywhere near the number. I don't think that's no, it's not going to happen. I think it'll be a much bigger number. And again, it's going to put them on the back foot in terms of processing. But, we'll see what happens. Only time will tell. Here we go. Affected environment and environmental consequences. There's several categories here. Air quality. Will your flying operations affect the air quality? And one of those things is obviously electric doesn't make a jot of difference, certainly not at the area of operation. It may be if you're using a coal-powered electricity generation station, well, the more you charge your lipos, the more coal gets burnt. But that's not a problem in terms of the FAA's looking at this situation. They want to know how much are you affecting air quality at the point of operation. And with electric models, absolutely nothing. In the case of nitro, gas and turbine models, well, there is going to be an effect on air quality. But they go on later in this document to document just how much carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide, volatiles, and all that sort of stuff these engines put out. So you know how many hours of operation you would need in order to reach or breach the minimum standards for air quality. And the bottom line on that is you're not going to be anywhere near close with a gas engine. Gas engines, you'd have to do 8,000 hours of gas engine operation to breach the air standards. And most clubs won't do that at all. So no worries in that respect. They don't, interestingly enough, they come with a lot of figures for gas engines, which produce a relatively small amount of emissions, but nothing for gas turbine engines, which produce much, much larger emissions, huge emissions, because generally speaking, the amount of carbon dioxide, for example, or carbon monoxide you're going to be spewing out your exhaust pipe is dependent on the amount of fuel that goes in, because the fuel contains the carbon, which gets oxidized and comes out as carbon dioxide or carbon monoxide. Now, gas engines run on the smell of an oily rag. You can get really long flights out of really small amounts of fuel with a gas engine. But gas turbine engines, they suck fuel like there's no tomorrow. Typical tank in a gas turbine model is, I can only think in litres, but it may be 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 litres of fuel because of the amount that is required to keep the thing in the air. And all that carbon is going to be spewed out the tailpipe in the form of carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide. So I would say the emissions of a turbine model are easily 10 times that of a gasser. So you're talking 8,000 hours for a gas engine. You're talking 800 hours for a turbine engine. And if you then say, well, we might have 10 turbines in the club, then that's 80 hours per flyer, and you've got 52 weekends. That's just over an hour per model per weekend. So you might be getting close there. So something that might need to be looked at, and maybe that's why the FAA didn't analyse gas turbine emissions, because it could have actually thrown some clubs over the edge, and they would have had to say, our emissions breach the standard, the minimum standard, the per diem that they have, of carbon emissions. In which case, their application for FRIA may not be granted. So that's something that turbine operators need to look closely at. And if you're going to be making a submission don't go for minimum numbers on the number of turbine flights you have, because it could really throw you over the limit. Anyway, going on, there are biological resources that must be considered if you're flying over the last remaining nest of the dodo. If it hadn't been extinct, then that would be a no-no. But again, the FAA say, don't worry too much. There's really nothing you're going to do with your models that's going to affect biological resources or wildlife. Then there's climate. You could be warming the planet. Well, again, they say, not going to happen. Not going to happen. And then there is this Department of Transport Act. I don't know what that is. I didn't look too closely at that, but I don't think it's an issue. And one of the things that could have been an issue was noise-compatible land use. Now, fortunately, I think most clubs already have agreements that cover noise, but there are minimum defined standards or maximum defined standards for noise, and you may have to do a measurement of how many decibels your field produces, because these are coming to effect everywhere. There are rural levels, there are suburban levels, there's industrial levels. You've got to make sure you're in compliance. And if you haven't done that already for your club, you may find you get a nasty surprise if you're running a lot of very noisy models. So that's something to consider. The FAA generally say don't worry too much about it, but you're going to have to provide this information. And if the information shows you're exceeding the maximums allowed, you could have to review your operating procedures and how you deal with things. But basically, that's it. As I say, just another hoop to jump through, more red tape to tie around your ankles and trip you up as you're doing your thing you want to do. It's just bureaucrats making work for other bureaucrats in order to justify their paychecks and the inordinate amounts of donuts and coffee they drink. That's it. So I thought I'd bring this to everyone's attention anyway, just to show you really basically how little chance you've got of getting your FRIA status granted by the time the 16th of September rolls around this year. I really, really don't think it's going to happen. I hope I'm wrong. Let's cross our fingers and hope I'm wrong. Anyway, that's it. Just an update. Thank you for watching. Thank you to those people who help me by supporting the channel through Patreon or channel memberships. Help me to make these videos to keep everyone informed and try and bring the information out there, because most people just don't have a damn clue. And often the regulators and the national bodies just don't have the resources to reach the people who need to know about what's going on. Nice to say something good about the FAA for a change. And that's it for another video. Thanks for watching. If you want to see some more interesting stuff about the hobby, go have a look at the other videos on this channel. Put a lovely one up recently. If you're a traditional old school model flyer, a bird of time flying in the late autumn here in New Zealand. Nice video. I think so anyway. Other people do too. Look at the comments. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.
Overregulation is like a tumor. It's killing our hobby. It must be terminated. Now!